Hello, friends, and welcome back to the Page Tween Friday conversation. This week we are sharing our top 10 favorite graphic novels, I guess you can say, or runs, creative team runs, graphic novels, our 10 favorites. And this is really tough, but we will start off as usual with introductions. Jared, will you start us off, please, sir?
Yes, Steve said it's a very hard task. I am Jared at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and also on the podcast Speculative Speculations and other fine podcasts here on pagechewing.com.
And Jose.
Hi, I'm Jose. I run the Jose's Amazing Worlds YouTube channel and also the Fantasy Talks Live podcast.
Yes. Yeah, this was really tough. I have my list of 10. Mike and I did this a month or two ago for the 50th episode of our Pick of the Week series, and I'm looking at it now, and I think I should have changed it. But so yeah, I've right after we did it, it's I was regretting not doing certain things with it. But how hard was this for each of you to do?
Yeah, I would have the caveat that 1 through 10 could easily be 10 through 1 for me. It was so hard. So and then I have like 8 honorable mentions I didn't want to leave off, and so it was very difficult. Yeah,
I think this is the easiest way to upset anyone listening, because how could you not put blah blah blah? How could your number blah blah? The only thing I try to do is exclude runs. So I've tried to do either, auto-conclusive, like, from conception, like beginning to end series, or like a standalone within a universe. So, like, for example, I've excluded things like, the Chris Claremont run on the X-Men. Like, no. I just, beginning to end stories. That's what I've tried to limit it to.
Well,
uh-oh.
Yeah, exactly.
Now you get the comments. Why'd you do that?
Yeah.
In order to limit it, in order to reduce it down to 10, because otherwise, crazy.
Yeah, I do have one run on my list.
I think I got a couple. Yeah.
Although I think I've broken that rule, but anyway, we can talk about it later, maybe. Right, come on, let's get started, Steve.
Yeah.
Go.
Oh, so I guess we'll start with honorable mentions. What do you have on your list?
Go on, Jared. Let's keep that order.
Okay. Well, I got like about 8 of them. If you can bear with me, but they're in alphabetical order, so it's good.
Amazing.
One was Age of Bronze by Eric Chanois, his retelling of the Trojan War. Outstanding historical type fiction comic. One was Criminal by our friends Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I know Steve liked that one too. And another one was Hellboy by Mike Mignola. Nice honorable mention there. Kingdom Come by Mark Waid and Alex Ross. The fully painted future DC Universe thing.
Classic.
Yeah. Lazarus by Greg Rucka. I really enjoyed that series. Promethea by Alan Moore and J.H. Williams III. Stray Bullets by David Lapham.
Very nice.
And I put Claremont's X-Men run as an honorable mention as well, from the late 80s. That's pretty much what got me into superhero comics, that run there. So those are my honorable mentions.
Solid.
I met Chris Claremont once. Got a couple of comics signed by him.
Nice.
He was a really nice guy, actually. Like, he would take the time to talk to you, not just sign. Like, started telling me all sorts of stuff. So he was great. My honorable mentions are, the first 2 are in alphabetical order, actually, is the Asterix series by René Goscinny and Albert Uderzo. Sort of, you can see my European influences there. Then at number 2, I've got, again, bringing it home, Black Sad by Juan Díaz Canales and Juanjo Guarnido, purely because I think the artwork there is just a joy in every single panel. It's just out of this world. And then possibly I could mention pretty much anything published in the Vertigo label, but some of them have made it into my top 10. But American Vampire, Sculpt, 100 Bullets, anything around that time from Vertigo was worth reading.
Damn, we're off to a really good start. Be tough. So yeah, my honorable mentions. I have Chris Claremont's X-Men because, like you, Jared, that got me into comics. I think started off reading classic X-Men back in the day, and that was the Claremont run.
Oh yeah,
Just classic. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. And I've thought about rereading that, but I don't know how it'll hit as an adult. But
yeah,
maybe
me
one of
either.
these days.
I had the same thoughts too, but
Yeah, not sure how that would hit. But also have Where the Body Was by Brubaker, and
nice.
we read that a few months back.
A little recency
Fatale,
bias.
yeah. I tried to not let that play into it too much, but also Fatale from Brubaker and Phillips.
Yeah.
So do have American Vampire by Scott Snyder. He's not the best with endings, so that's kind of where I didn't make my top 10. There's a few, I mean Snyder. It's Snyder-esque, but really great stuff. And I also have Girls by the Luna Brothers. And it's a book that I'm not sure I even understand what's going on, but it's kept me thinking about it for years. I still think about it. So I'm not quite sure I even understand what's going on, but it's very thought-provoking. And it was one of those that I didn't really know what to expect. And I, like I said, still not sure I even understand what's going on, but it's one of those that sticks with you for sure.
Yeah. I did meet Scott Snyder one time. He was a very nice guy. Yeah, so.
He was?
Yeah, he was very nice. Yeah.
Oh, good. I always hold my breath whenever someone says, "Well, I met so and so." Like, I hope they weren't an asshole. Like, I hope they were nice. Because sometimes you meet I don't want to say meet your heroes, but you meet people that you look up to, and you find out that they're really they're not very nice, and you're like, that kind of, it's a bummer. But so it's nice to hear when someone's a decent person.
I've had that through several Comic Cons I've attended through the years. You see the guys that are just there to sign your book. They barely look at you. They just sign their name and give it away, and that's it. Whereas others like, "Oh, what's your name?" They will write a dedication. They'll engage you a little bit, and just, I don't know, maybe it takes an extra minute or two of the time there. But I think as a fan, it makes a massive difference.
Yeah, I try and understand too that it's probably exhausting meeting so many people like all day long, and it's I'm sure after a while it's like, okay, just give me the book and let me sign it. So when someone does take the time to do that, it's special when they just take a few minutes just to say, "Hey, how's it going? What's your name?" or dedicated or whatever. So it's really nice when that happens. All right, so we ready to get into it? This is really tough.
Go.
I've been changing it as we've been talking, so it'll probably change. So we'll start with the number 10. We'll go down the line, and we'll each say a little bit about our picks. And Jared, you want to start us off with your number 10?
Alrighty. I brought visual aids for you guys, not for our listeners, but I got
Just
number
trust
10.
us, he does have visual aids. Yeah.
The Fade Out by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. And I think we recently talked about this on a podcast earlier this year. And my favorite Phillips and Brubaker story. I really love it. Takes place, in the 1950s, kind of murder mystery type thing. And just a fantastic story all around, tightly woven. Some of Phillips' best artwork he's ever done. You could pick a lot of stuff out of the Brubaker and Phillips canon to throw on this list, and it was so hard to choose one to actually make it, but that's the one that did it for me.
Brilliant.
So you only have one Brubaker book on your list?
Yes.
Wow.
I suspect Steve will have another one.
I don't know that I do it. Yeah. I don't think I do.
Yeah.
Well, I'm surprised. Yeah.
But any of those honorable mentions I said could have been on there too. So it's
I guess that's the challenge of making it 10 is because you do have to. But it's nice having honorable mentions because you kind of sneak a few in. You couldn't quite squeeze in. But number 10, what's yours, Jose?
Right, so being very patriotic here, I've gone for Wrinkles by Paco Roca. Wrinkles, you've got it in English, and it's a very, very poignant story about Alzheimer's. And obviously, dealing with Alzheimer's, it doesn't have a happy ending. But man, did I cry when I finished that book. And when a book can, I think, reach you and touch you like that, I think it deserves a spot in my top 10. Plus, talk about nice guys. I met Paco Roca at a Comic-Con. I was the last person in the queue. The publisher guy was at the queue, was like, he's not going to sign any more beyond here. And I was like, well, I'll stay and take my chance. I was 2 hours in the queue. He was sketching for every single person that brought a book to him. And when I got there, he sketched and dedicated Wrinkles to me.
Wow.
And I had another of his books in my hand. So he gave me Wrinkles back, and I was like, oh, great, thank you. And as I was about to turn to go, he went, what about the other one? And I was like, what? I said, yeah, give me the other one. So I gave him the other book, and he sketched and dedicated the other book. So he's a super, super, super nice guy. And actually, he got chosen by DC a couple of years ago to write. They did this little limited series of Batman all over the world, where they got different writers and artists from all over the world to write a Batman story set in their country. And Paco Roca was chosen to write the Batman story set in Spain.
Oh, cool.
Wow.
So, Wrinkles by Paco Roca, if you want to cry, my number 10.
So if you would have had a bad experience with him at the Comic-Con, would it still be your number 10?
Good question.
Wow, that's a
Possibly.
haymaker.
But, we go back to... Yes, because I've got a controversial artist, writer later in my list, and it's still there. So separating the art from the artist is in my top 10. Extra bonus points for being a super duper nice guy.
Nice.
Is this available regularly in like trade paperback and stuff?
Yeah. Because I was checking on Amazon this morning before coming here. It's been translated into German. It's in English. It's a short book, and it's very, very sweet, but very poignant.
Nice.
Yeah, this is really tough. So my number 10, which easily, like you said, Jared, could have been anywhere between 1 and 10. My number 10 is Nameless by Grant Morrison. It was published by Image Comics. I think this is from 2000 to 2000 teens, give or take. It is I think it's a science fiction horror story about a group of astronauts who got into space, who were trying to land on a object in space, and lots of things go wrong. And there's so many levels to this book. There's so many little mentions of other things, and you put it all together, and I still haven't put it all together. It's just there's so many different levels to it that you can pick apart, in different names and different pieces, different things in the artwork that you see in the backgrounds, and it's so detailed. I've read it 3 or 4 times, and I still haven't caught everything. I know I haven't. So it's definitely one that stuck with me, and it's just disturbing. It's gory. It's all the things. It's dark. It's spooky. It hits on so many different levels, and it just tickles my, that itch of, goriness and horror that I really enjoy. So, yeah, Nameless is my number 10.
Nice.
All right, Jared, you're up with your number 9.
All right, number 9. We go into Lucifer from DC Vertigo Comics. I really love this run. He's actually a character out of the Neil Gaiman Sandman run on there, and Mike Carey, the writer for this series, just took that character and he ran with it, and he expanded the mythology of heaven and hell and the universe so greatly. I thought he did just a wonderful job of making his characters and his all the characters around him there's a point in the book where he actually starts his own universe and stuff, and it's just great. And he comes like his own god. It's just a great run by Mike Carey, and I had a blast reading it. And you don't necessarily have to have read Sandman to read this series. My brother didn't read Sandman, and he read this series and he loved it. And I just had to tell him like one or two little things. That was it from the Sandman series. But you can read this series on its own and really enjoy it. And I really enjoyed the heck out of Lucifer.
Yeah, something that I always mention, never ceases to amaze me is how is when you stop to think that the Vertigo universe exists in the same universe as the main DC superheroes.
Mm.
So you've got Batman, Superman, all these people, and then you start digging underneath, and you got Swamp Thing and Sandman and Lucifer and all this other stuff, and it's a much more interesting, appealing side of that universe than
Yeah, and those superhero types never come up in the
no.
Lucifer run.
All I'm saying is that they allegedly coexist in the same
Allegedly, yeah. There's a weird ambiguity about that. Like some of the books ignore it completely, and then some of the books tried to include it originally in the Vertigo what do you call that, imprint?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had this mandate that they had to include some of the superhero stuff to start off with, just to get people to jump on. But I think they moved away from it as time went on.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to
Just
know
imagine seeing Superman show up in Preacher or something, It'd be weird.
Number 9. Yep.
My number 9 is The Walking Dead by Robert Kirkman and Charlie Adlard. Because I think a longevity is a super long series, even though I think they ended up cutting it shorter than it was intended to be in the first place. But I think the length and the scope, and it kind of suffers a little bit from power creep, that every next opponent has to be stronger and scarier than the previous one. So I think it suffers a little bit from that. But it is an entertaining, quote unquote, fun ride there. And I think in a lot of these sort of zombie apocalypse type movies or whatever, you're always thrust in the middle of it. You never get sort of from beginning to there. And I think, or even out of it, isn't it? Whereas in The Walking Dead, it takes you from beginning to end. And I think that's an interesting approach.
You know what's funny? I look back and reading that series, and I remember really enjoying it. And when I was making my list, it didn't even cross my mind. And I think it's because the TV series soured me on the franchise. I think I kind of just got tired of it, and I think that's part of it, because I like issue 100. I remember sitting down to read that issue when it came out, and it blew my mind that those things happened. I guess it's not too much of a spoiler because everyone probably knows what happens in issue 100 with Negan and a few characters, but the baseball bat thing, and that was brutal. I mean, I remember it being like really my jaw dropped when I read that book. So yeah, it had some really great moments in it. I just think, like you said, the power creep in it, and it did have an abrupt ending, but yeah, it's one of those that you wonder how we would look back on that series without the adaptation.
And I still think that the adaptation was well done, so that the comic reader got something out of the TV adaptation. I think that was quite clever how they added those new characters and handled that. But yeah, even with the TV show, I think I kind of switched off maybe the last 2 seasons. I'm not even sure I actually finished the TV show. But my wife didn't read the comics, and she loved the TV show for like the first 8 seasons or something like that. So, I think it was very engaging.
Yeah, I mean, it did some really great things that you didn't really see, especially at that time. I talk about it like as a lifetime ago, but really, really great. moments in the book, for sure. So I guess it's time for number 9. Again, this is really tough. This could have been any other place, but my number 9 was Preacher by Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon. I mean, what can you say about it? It's a
bingo.
It's an all-time, yeah. And Jose has it on his list too. It's an all-time classic. I mean, I think everyone. It's funny. There's some great characters in it. It's a really crude humor in it. There's lots of questions about religion and belief, and but it does it in a way that it knows what it is. It's the Garth Ennis sense of humor, the very crude humor, and he's very deliberate, knows what he's doing. So I really enjoyed Preacher. It's one that I read every so often, and again, it's another one that such a disappointment. I know we're not talking adaptations, but it's such a disappointment that they completely screwed up that adaptation. It's such a bummer that they couldn't make that work, because I think they had something at the beginning and it completely fell apart. So it's too bad that didn't work out. But Preacher, the book, really, really great. And it's a book that everyone should read.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I like that book a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Can I mention that I met both Ennis and Dillon? I've got my Preacher signed by them as well. And totally agree with the TV show, because my wife hadn't read the comics. But when the TV show came out, I was like, Sarah, you got to watch this. This is like, and then it's like, oh, crap. Like,
yeah,
really, really disappointing. As a side note, if anyone hasn't done so, Ennis and Dillon had a run on Hellblazer before they did Preacher. And some of the themes they explore in Hellblazer are fleshed out and taken to the next level. I think you can see sort of the seeds of Preacher planted in Hellblazer.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I read that too. And you're absolutely right. He definitely was locked into that kind of thinking and that kind of theme. Those themes, that he covers in Preacher.
No bingo, Jared, with Hellblazer?
Nope.
Wow.
I liked it. I loved it, actually. But, there's only so many you can choose.
Yeah, it's tough. Yeah. Some tough cuts for sure.
Yeah. I did meet Robert Kirkman, speaking of Walking Dead earlier, at Boston Comic Con. Way, way before he got famous. He was like in the back alley with all the rest of the writers, and didn't really know who he was. So I didn't get a signature or anything, but just said hello briefly.
I've got Charlie Atlard's signature and dedication on my Walking Dead. By the way.
All right.
Number 8.
Number 8. All right. Mm-hmm. Number 8 is The Ring of the Nibelung by P. Craig Russell. This is P. Craig Russell's adaptation of Wagner's opera, The Ring of the Nibelung. And his artwork is just absolutely gorgeous. And he is basically known as the opera adaptation comic book guy. He's done Parsifal, he's done a bunch of other ones. And, the Magic Flute and all that stuff. And but this is his magnum opus. This is his best work ever. He really knocks it out of the park. It runs like 12 issues, I think, and it's just a fantastic adaptation of that opera. And the artwork it blew me away. Really blew me away.
Wow.
Nothing to add to that. I totally was surprised. I had to check that one out.
Yeah, me too.
Do so.
Yeah.
It's great.
Okay, Jose, you're up.
Number 8. Yeah, I think I've broken my own rule, if you can consider it a run, and it's the Batman Long Halloween by Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale.
Yeah,
and
that's solid.
Once again, I've got it signed by Tim Sale.
Jeez.
I know. Sorry. So the reason it's on my list is because I think it's a Batman book that is auto-conclusive. It's a standalone, self-contained story, you can give it to someone that doesn't have a background on the Batman comics, and they can read it beginning to end. And it's got that sort of murder mystery feel to it. You've got the whole rogue of Batman villains making an appearance there. And I think if I wanted to give a Batman book to someone that is not really into the character or has a sort of prior knowledge background, yeah, you can read Long Halloween and have a good time and leave it. Don't need to continue if it didn't do it for you.
Nice.
I agree.
It's on my shelf. I haven't read it.
It's a great choice. I agree. I really like that one. That's an outstanding book.
Thank you.
All right, so my number 8 is another Garth Ennis book. And that is Fury Max, is on the Max line. And this one surprised me. I was hesitant to even check this out. Oh, thank you. I was hesitant to even check this one out when I heard about it, because I've never been a fan of Fury. I don't really care about the character. From all the Marvel movies, you're like, yeah, whatever. But Garth Ennis writing it, and then I heard a lot of great reviews. So it's a story about Nick Fury, and obviously, but I was surprised how poignant it was, and how it kind of follows him through his life. And by the end of it, you're reflecting on life and aging and love and past relationships, and I mean, it just runs the gamut. And of course, it has the character work that Ennis is. I'm a huge fan of his characters and the way that he develops them and kind of humanizes all of them and makes them all imperfect and relatable in some way. So, yeah, Fury Max. It's only a 4-issue run, but it's packed. It feels like a lot more than that when you look back on it. So, Fury Max is my number 8.
Wow.
Yeah, there's so much stuff from Garth Ennis that I want to check out. Like his run on the Punisher Max as well. And he's a great writer. I don't think he's said a foot wrong since pretty much the beginning.
All right, Jared, you're up.
Number 7 is Bone by Jeff Smith. I absolutely love this saga, this huge, massive phone book that he puts out. I've read it to 2 of my kids after I read it myself when it first came out, and then I subsequently read it to them. It's starts off as a probably teen level or preteen level type story, with these anthropomorphic characters that go through this kind of Lord of the Rings type quest. And as it ages, it kind of as it goes on, it kind of ages up a little bit as it goes on and gets a little more darker, and gets and it has more of that darker Lord of the Rings feel somewhat to it. And it's a really fantastic book, and it's done. Jeff Smith has a unique style of artwork that's it's a bit cartoony, but it's but he also has dark inks that go with it to give it a little bit of an edge beyond like a Mickey Mouse or something like that. But it's just beautifully done book, and I recommend it highly.
I think that's one I've read. I've got it there, and I think it's one that possibly at some point I would like a reread and a discussion. Because I think when I read it, it was like, that sort of kids adventure. Because when I go sticking in my mind, Jared, is the cow race, isn't it? There's a section with this like a cow race.
Cow race, yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Like, what's that all about? Like,
yeah, it starts off a bit episodic, like it was in a funny paper or something like that to begin with, but then it actually gets into an epic story, an epic fantasy. Once it gets further in, and the cow race is towards the beginning, and that's kind of one of the episodic ones. But then there is echoes of that later on in the book, and the reason behind it and all that stuff. So it actually does come up, and he really does have a lot of subtle things going on and a lot of themes that develop along the way, and it's pretty fantastic.
So would you say it's an all ages read?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be reading it to a 5-year-old, but definitely you're anywhere from like 8 to 55. You know, so
Oh wow. Okay. If you're 56, don't bother.
yeah. Next year I can't read it, so that's okay.
Right. My number 7, we've already talked about, is Preacher. So I think nothing more to add. I think possibly of that Vertigo run, maybe Preacher, maybe 100 Bullets, maybe Why the Last Man. I think Sculpt. They're all very different, but they're all super high quality, great storytelling. But I think possibly Preacher, because of the impact and the craziness of it all. That
Yeah.
Garth Ennis, I'm going to take things to the next level.
Oh, yeah.
And then he did Crossed, where he took things even to the next level. So
Oh yeah.
I think Preacher's one of those that has to be somewhere there.
Yeah, it's fun. I used to do a lot of business travel, and I was actually driving. I was going to Lubbock, Texas, and I was driving over there, and I ended up getting pulled over in Muleshoe, Texas, and got like a $200 speeding ticket. I was like doing like 4 miles an hour over, and that night I read the section about Muleshoe, so it was a weird universe thing. But yeah, I'll never forget that.
I tell you what, as a non-American, reading about the Southern Gothic, that's got that, the redneck hillbilly sort of, echoes of what's the movie? Come on,
Deliverance.
Deliverance.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Always expecting that kind of weird thing there. Yeah.
It's strange. There's areas that are really great and the friendliest people you'll ever meet, and really welcoming, and they'll bring you into their. I mean, they'll be the nicest people you ever meet, and then you find there's other pockets of places that are like, I'm afraid to get to get out of my car. So yeah, it's a weird thing, but yeah, definitely good and bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Watch out for the banjos for sure.
Oh.
All right. So my number 7 is The Killing Joke by Alan Moore. It's one of those that by the end it makes you see Batman and superheroes and the Joker in a completely different way. And very iconic. There's some very iconic scenes in it and events in the story. And it's the kind of the Joker that I think it's one of the more terrifying versions of the Joker. I think the Joker's gone through different, just like any of them have gone on for so long. But I think this is one of the more disturbing versions of the Joker, and only in a way that Alan Moore can pull off. So it's definitely one that'll keep you thinking about it after the fact. And it's a class. I think it's a classic. If you haven't read it, it's worth giving it a shot. I know they've done some other Killing Joke related stuff, but it's hard to recreate what someone like Alan Moore does. I mean, it's hard to, just like Watchmen, you can't really recreate that magic that happens at the time. So, but definitely want to check out if you're a fan of Batman and want to be challenged a little bit on what Batman is and what he represents in the Joker too.
Yeah, that's one that I thought about putting on the list. And again, I met Brian Bolland, but he wasn't one of those nice. He wasn't one of the nice artists. He's one of the ones that just signed his name and gave me the book back without looking. So maybe that's why I didn't make my list today. But it's got that iconic image of when the Joker goes crazy for the first time, and he's laughing with a super elongated chin, and so on. It's very, very iconic. Even though Alan Moore over the years was not overly proud of that particular story, but it was meant to be a standalone, and the events of the story became canon for the Batman character. So.
Yeah, very cool book.
Yeah, I'm surprised there's no bingos in that one. No bingos. No. Wow.
I don't know. I think my top 3 is going to be full of bingos, but there we go.
Tough crowd. All All right, so we're down to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was kind of quite like that. We seem to have, we're bringing very different things to the table so
Got
far.
some variety here. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, that's good.
Go on, Charo, take us to the next.
All right, number
level.
6 is ElfQuest
Oh wow.
by Richard and Wendy Pinney. This book basically got me into comics because when I first started collecting comics in the 80s, I was looking for fantasy because I was playing Dungeons and Dragons. I was reading fantasy novels. And so I was looking for fantasy, and I found a couple, but this one was the one that really kicked it into high gear. It's an epic fantasy done at its best. It's, of course, about a bunch of elves, but the artwork is stunning. I think the artwork being stunning is kind of a given for all these top 10 books, really. But it's part of comics. It's part of why we read them, is to get that enjoyment in the art. But this was done by an independent. Wendy and Richard Pinney. They had their own company. They weren't subject to Marvel and DC and rules and all that stuff. They could do whatever they want. The artwork may look like it's young adult, but the book is not at all. There's plenty of violence and sex in here, and there's some just great storytelling and great themes that go through this book, and it's a great fantasy comic book if you like fantasy fiction, beyond the fantasy of superheroes, that is, yeah. And one of the formative things that really cemented my relationship with comic books over the years.
Is it a long run? Is it a long series?
Yeah. They have different story arcs. So the original story arc, and it comes in all different formats of books and different sizes and stuff like that. The one I'm showing you guys is is like a graphic novel collection from the first 5 or 6 issues or whatever, but it also comes in these big fat collectible phone book size things, and it comes in color, it comes in black and white. There's so many different versions of it. It's crazy. And I did meet Richard and Wendy Pinney at a signing at a store, and they were very nice people. She signed all the stuff I brought, and it was great. And talked to them for a minute, just kind of starstruck, but so I didn't get many words out. But and I know Wendy Pinney worked with Janie Wirtz, wrote story for their ElfQuest universe too, in one of their prose collections of short stories. Very, really great stuff, and one of the premier woman artists in the field, really, in the genre, in the comic books, from the 80s, and just outstanding, really good stuff.
Have you invited them on the channel?
I haven't seen anything from them in a long time, so I don't know how active they are these days. But
no, you never know.
I'll try to look up their info and give them to you, Steve. You gotta have
for
them
you
on Friday.
Oh man, we'll reach out. All right, Jose, you're up. No pressure.
Wow. Yeah. Well. Okay. So number 6, I've got the Contract with God trilogy by Will Eisner.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, Will Eisner, the comic awards bear his name for a reason. And it was the kind of first graphic novel conceived as such. It was like, a work that was meant to be written and drawn as a self-contained story away from, more traditional superheroes and sort of comics for kids. And again, maybe as a European, is having that sort of vision of the United States as this land of hope and dreams that actually don't necessarily deliver, and when the dreams don't come true, and that sort of loss of faith, and coming of age, uh, and this sort of evolution of American society, I really enjoyed. And sometimes maybe in my head I'm mixing it up because I've also got the New York graphic novel by Will Eisner, which kind of deals with similar themes. So maybe they are interchangeable, but I think Contract with God, because of sort of its place in graphic novel history and the themes, I find quite appealing. And it's on my number 6.
Yeah. Wasn't he the guy that coined the term graphic novel?
Yes, so
Yeah, I
Contract
think
with
so.
God
Oh,
was the
wow.
first one that was
Yep.
actively
Yeah.
marketed as a graphic novel.
That's
not
right. Yeah,
a
that's what I
comic
thought.
book.
Yeah.
Jared
Wow.
knows his stuff.
Yeah. Always, yeah. Jared knows a lot about. Always get lots of history, which is great. This is really tough. So
yeah. So
I
hard.
keep changing my list as we're talking.
Stop.
So
Leave the
yeah,
pen.
yeah. I know I need to put it down. All right. So my number 6 is The Killer, which is a little bit. It's another one that really stuck with me through the years. This is by artist Luke Giacomin and writer Mates.
Oh yeah, I read that. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. So they made a Netflix adaptation, which was kind of close to the book.
Oh really?
Kind of. I mean, it was. As far as like the character was pretty close. It is very much a slow burn tale about an assassin who, when you look at him, he looks like somebody you'd walk past, and he's not physically imposing. He doesn't seem like he's like a normal person. He looks like a normal, he looks like someone we'd be talking about the Wheel of Time with. Um, it looks like like a normal person, but he's this calculated, cold-blooded killer who focuses on patience and hunting and all those things. And he's I love that different approach to an assassin. He's not at all what you'd expect, and I just found it very captivating. Just the story of kind of what it takes to do that sort of work and to hunt people and to be a killer, and to what does that mean, and how does that what kind of outlook do you need on life and on other people to do that kind of thing. So yeah, I thought it was another one that really stuck with me through the years that I go back and read once in a while. So The Killer, and the adaptation was pretty decent. It wasn't like fantastic, but it was pretty good.
Okay,
Cool. I'll have to check out that show. Yeah.
let's keep adding to the list.
Yeah. All right, so we're down to number 5, halfway through.
Halfway
Number
there.
5 is Strangers in Paradise by Terry Moore. This is yet another independently published comic book. It is an epic, sprawling story that is a romance, for one thing, and it's also kind of an espionage spy thriller at the same time. And I love Terry Moore's artwork. His facial expressions are second to none, and he just tells a deep story that just really gets to you, really gets to the heart of what it means to love somebody and what you would do for them. And I am astounded every time I finish one of his comics, because I'm like, every time I get one, I'm like, oh yeah, okay, I read it, and then I'm like, oh, wow, that was really great. And it's astounding because you don't expect that from a romance story, and that turns into like the spy espionage. Like, it really, once he gets like, this is these pocket books, so like there's like 5 volumes of these, and once you get to volume 3 or 4, it's a little more action packed as it gets really into the nuts and bolts of the espionage part of it. But just the whole thing is beautifully the way it's told, and the way and how you get to know these characters on a level that's just like getting to know your neighbor, and it's really great. Highly recommend it.
Because Terry Moore was the original artist for the first 6 issues of The Walking Dead before he got replaced by Charlie Adlard.
No, it wasn't Terry Moore. That's a different Moore.
Oh,
Yeah. This guy's always been on his own, independent.
okay.
Abstract Studios is the name of it.
Hmm.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. It's not the same guy.
Is it, okay. Right. So, and sorry, because you're holding a pretty chunky volume, and you said that's one of how many?
6 actually. I think it's 6. Yeah,
Wow.
that's the main story. And he's written other series that are related to this story, like in the same universe, but different stories. He has like one that's a little sci-fi. It's called Echo.
Yeah.
I think I've heard of it. Yeah.
And another one that's kind of horror. It's called Rachel Rising.
Yeah, that's right.
And so if you prefer those, you can definitely read those on their own. The connections are very Easter eggy. It's not essential to understanding the story. And I think there's another one too, but I can't remember it now. But this is the one. This is his like big series, magnum opus, and it's just fantastic.
Wow. Yeah, it is Terry Moore and Tony Moore was the artist.
Yeah,
it's very close. Yeah.
Almost. Okay.
Very close.
Fair enough. Okay, should I go?
Yeah, go for it.
Number 5, I've got Safe Area Gorazde by Joe Sacco. So, Joe Sacco is a war correspondent that then draws and writes the stories of his journeys into war-torn areas. He's could have picked any of his footnotes in Gaza. I could have picked Palestine. I just picked Safe Area Gorazde because I think it was the first one for me that got me into his work and showed me that comics can deal with very real and very serious matters. It's just a different way to do journalism. And, Joe Sacco goes there. He goes there to these war areas to talk to regular people, to show how the horrors of war affect normal people. And, Sarajevo, I think it was 93, they were celebrating the Winter Olympics, and then 2 months later it was being bombed and destroyed during the fall of Yugoslavia. So just for that, I really like all of Joe Sacco's work, and I could have picked any of his, but this one because it was the first.
Yeah, that got a lot of praise, that volume there when it first came out.
Yeah,
yeah.
And I think he had like a leftover story that he then published a little bit later called The Fixer, which was the story of a fixer between the maybe the United Nations troops and the locals, and then how he made his living during that period, but afterwards, how does he get back to life and stuff like that. So,
wow,
yeah, cool stuff.
Adding it to the list. My wallet's going to be very upset after this episode. All right, number 5. This is another one that was tough. Could have been anywhere on the list, which is Invincible. It is by Robert Kirkman. I'm not a big fan of superhero books, and I'm not a big fan of coming of age stories, and I'm not a big fan of kids, like kid heroes, even less than coming of age stuff. But this all worked. I mean, I was hesitant to give it a shot, but within a few issues, I was hooked on it. And there's so many great ideas and questions that are asked in this book about what does it mean to be a hero, the questions you have to, the decisions you have to make. What is it, what does all the responsibility that comes with being a hero and having that kind of power. And then there's sometimes just, there's no good answer for the things that you have to do to save X amount of people, or to the deals you have to make, or the other decisions you have to make. And of course, there's a whole nother storyline with people, I guess, I'm trying not to be spoilery, but there's a whole nother storyline for people from another planet that kind of plays on the Superman thing. That there's some knockdown, drag out, just awesome fights and battle scenes in it that just, blew me away. That things happen that you would not expect to happen in a book like this. and I just loved it. It's great, and time for another reread of that one too. But yeah, if you're into superhero comics and you want something a little bit more on the edge, and if you haven't read Invincible, then what are you waiting for?
Do you like the adaptation of this?
I haven't seen it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I was hesitant to get into it because the first season was like 2 years ago, and then I think we're only into season 2 now. Is that right? So
Yeah.
I worry about them never finishing it. So, but I've already read the book. I shouldn't be worried about it. But
Yeah. You'll have the book always, and the series is pretty good. It's actually pretty faithful so far. I mean, you know how these companies tend to veer off as time goes on, but
yeah.
but
It's too bad it's not more consistent. I think it'd have more buzz.
yeah.
Oh, I'm getting into it now.
All right, we're down to top 4, right? For me, number 4 is Lone Wolf and Cub by Kazui Koike. I'm not sure how to say that, and Goseki Kojima. For me, this is manga. There's all other manga I can toss aside. This is manga. This has been reprinted by Dark Horse Comics a few times. It was originally reprinted in the United States by First Comics in the 80s. But First Comics tried to do it in color, and they tried to do it regular comic book size, and it didn't quite work. It wasn't very presentable in that format, and they never finished it. And then Dark Horse Comics took over reprinting in these little tiny books, and they finished the whole thing in these little tiny books, come in 28 volumes, and it's just fantastic. Nobody has the kinetic style of artwork that Kojima does. It moves on the page. It's a little scratchy at times for the purpose, and just fantastic artwork. And it is a little. It does have some over the top violence and stuff like that, so be prepared for that. But if that's your thing, you're gonna love it. And of course, it has that whole theme of the father and son, assassin. The father assassin. He's become an assassin for a reason. You find out all the whole history behind that and stuff like that, and what happened to him. And it's just it's one of the greatest sagas ever told. And I read that, and then I've tried to read other manga stuff since then, and most of it I just can't get into. It's not, I don't know, it's not the same. It doesn't have that same visceral storytelling that this does. And everything else I've read that's been manga has been okay, but not like this. This is just outstanding. It's great.
I quite like how you said throw every other manga away, and Steve's got the Berserk hardback volumes right behind him. Yeah, manga's a funny one. Like, I haven't read that much. I'm going through the whole Dragon Ball thing now, but yeah, I think that's not the best possibly exponent of
and I'm sorry. I apologize if I'm insulting all the One Piece people out there. I haven't I haven't read that, so I don't know. Maybe it's great.
They have a rabid fan base, don't they?
They do. Yeah, I heard that.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, manga is different. I think it's becoming much more popular now too in recent years. I don't know about you guys, but my bookstore has a giant section devoted for manga.
Sure.
It is actually outselling traditional superheroes, both in the US, but also here in Europe as well. It's significantly cheaper for whatever the reason. I think maybe the production isn't that high. A lot of the manga is just black and white, I think. But maybe this that Japanese ethic of work where you're guaranteed a very long run of the series, and people get invested in the characters, and it's much more affordable.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
juggernaut. It really does outsell everything else.
I think having a specific run, I mean, I know there's some that go on for a long time, and even stuff like Berserk that's not even done yet. But there's other ones that are contained stories that you go into it and you'll read it from start to finish, and also there's no things like crossovers, or you don't have to buy 5 other books to follow to follow what's going on in the book that you're reading. There's none of that kind of event thing going on either. So
Or
maybe that's part of it.
or like restarting everything, the whole timeline.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, they just create these characters, they create the stories, and I think when they run their course, they seem to just be able to move on and not, have that mentality of, we got this great character, what can we do with him or her next? I think the approach is totally different.
Yeah. Is it my turn?
Jose, number 4.
Sorry. I was
I think
losing track.
I think my top 4 are gonna be quite. Maybe I played it too safe or too predictable, but maybe we're gonna start shouting bingo. At number 4, I've got Maus by Art Spiegelman,
Nice.
and no one else has got it.
I haven't read it yet.
I am
forgot
surprised.
about it.
I think Maus, the art, I think you can criticize it. I don't think it's the best artwork out there. I mean, it was groundbreaking because of the whole bestialization of the characters. The Jews were mice, and the Nazis were cats, and the Polish were pigs, and the Americans were dogs, and you get all that sort of stuff. And then, but the book's got 2 parts, and you've always got the first part, which is the harrowing concentration camps, Nazi final solution sort of thing.
Yeah.
But what shook me the most about the book is the second part. When Art Spiegelman's father survives the concentration camps, he moves to the US, he manages to make a living, he's got his son, and as an old man, he's racist towards the blacks in America. And, it's that kind of introspection of, Art Spiegelman coming to terms with the fact that his father, an Auschwitz survivor, is racist against other people. And I think it's just that kind of, well, that's the human condition, isn't it? We can be as irrational about things as any other creature, maybe. And for me, that was quite a shocking sort of revelation when I read the story. I haven't reread it more than twice, I think, because I find the art not so compelling, and I think people like Black Sad has done taken that idea of using animals as characters and done a way better work. But he won the Pulitzer Prize for a reason.
Yeah. Oh, it's a very powerful story. It's really a gut punch. Yeah, it's good.
Well, I need to read that one too. Jeez. This is going to be bad. All right. So my number 4 was one that Jared mentioned in his honorable mentions, which is Stray Bullets by David Lantham. This one is there's so many, just the characters stand out. And I don't remember so many of the storylines. You just remember so many of the characters and the events that happen and the formative events that happen to these characters. There's so many heartbreaking moments in this book, and there's so many funny side stories that go on. There's a dream world that one of the characters has, like a superhero that they become, and it's great. If you love noir crime or good character work, all the characters are just down to earth and flawed and just trying to get by kind of thing. And I don't know, but not all of them are trying to. There's some scumbags in the book too, but they're just great stories. Just a great story, and it'll keep you captivated from start to finish. And I just love David Lamtham's work, especially on Stray Bullets Around That World. So I have the Ultimate Edition that it doubles as a weapon back there. But yeah, it's just a wonderful, wonderful book.
Yeah, I love that series too. That was, yeah, like I said, it was my honorable mentions, and his artwork is great. He first started with Valiant Comics, the series Harbinger, when Valiant was trying to break into the superhero market, and it was a great series at the time. And then he followed when the guy who started Valiant got kicked out, and he started another company after that. He followed him and did another book called Warriors of Plasm. And he just has some really wild, interesting artwork in there too.
Yeah.
And then he went out and did his own thing with Stray Bullets independently, and fantastic series, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just a quick mention for was it Uberheist? Underheist? His recent book that he did, his 4-issue run. I haven't finished it, but yeah, it's has some horror elements in it. So if you're a fan of Lamtham's work, be sure and check that one out. It just wrapped up a month or two ago, so
Cool.
good stuff.
Yeah.
Top 3.
I was just wondering if our choices, because we haven't really overlapped too much so far, whether our choices reveal some of our personalities, but I'll leave that for other people to judge and decide.
Oh yeah, it will.
Yeah, personalities, experience, whatever. Yeah, absolutely. My top 3, I think I just could switch them around in a cycle.
Yeah.
But for now, this might be a mistake. Maybe this should be 1. I don't know. But for now, Watchmen is number 3.
Bingo!
Yeah.
Bingo.
Okay, yeah, I thought that was going to do some bingos, but yeah, we all know the story of Watchmen and how awesome it is and how influential it is. And the one thing I wanted to point about Dave Gibbons' artwork in here, in Alan Moore's direction to him about his use of the 9-panel format in the pages, and how it was quite essential to the story that they did it that way, and just how it was just it's so beautifully done, and it's so it was such a huge launching point for people to do different stuff when this came out back in the 80s, with not only with superheroes, but just to go out and do different things. And Watchmen, Alan Moore, he was making a huge statement about the history of comics and about the place of superheroes within our literature and within our own consciousness, and just deconstructing the whole superhero genre and kind of rebuilding it up for people to enjoy superheroes in a different way, and it's just fantastic.
Yeah, I think it's one of those books I've read several times. I've met Dave Gibbons, he's dedicated it, and I had a chance to talk to him a little bit. I've also met David Lloyd, who drew V for Vendetta with Moore, and again, I could tell some stories about Alan Moore's personality there. But I think Watchmen, the first time I read it, I'm not ashamed to say I didn't maybe even 50% understand it, but I had that notion of I've read something important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the more I've talked to people, the more I've read about it, on a second read, on a third read, there's so much depth in there. And then when you start paying attention to the page and the paneling structure that Jaro has mentioned, because they play with the, there's a whole series where they play with the panel arrangements, and it's like a clock ticking, and there's like a double panel that moves around the page. And there's so much detail in that story that is just incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. You can read one issue and to go back and read that one issue again and get something completely different out of it than the first time you read it, and just pay attention to different things and get something completely out of not just the issue by itself, but how the issue relates to the rest of the issues in the story. It's just outstanding.
And even the whole Curse of the Black Fighter thing that is mixed in between. Like the first time it's like, why is this here? But then you understand why, and everything makes sense, and everything has got a reason to be.
Yeah, I think most people, I'm sure some people read it the first time and like, oh, I get it, but I didn't understand most of it first time I read it. It took a while to reread it and really pay attention and kind of unravel what's happening. And I'm sure there's still more that I didn't pick up the first 4 times I've read it. So it's just one of those. I mean, there's so many different layers to it that it's really, really complex and just full of. I mean, it's brilliant. I mean, can't beat it. It's my turn, right?
It's my number 3.
Jose, number 3, yeah.
My number 3. So I've got another more work there, and that's From Hell.
Oh yeah.
Because I quite liked the whole historical fiction out there around Jack the Ripper, and the fact that it is they never found Jack the Ripper, they never caught him, and Alan Moore's theory of who Jack the Ripper was in this grand conspiracy is actually a plausible explanation of the case. It's something that is considered, it's not the most likely, but it could conceivably be the case that Jack the Ripper was who Alan Moore portrays in the story and did those killings for the reasons that he presents. And again, he could have written a historical fiction novel, but he decided to not to do it in graphic novel format. It's just mind-blowing. And then the amount of detail and documentation and stuff like that is not just a story, it's a potential history.
I can't remember the artist. Oh, Kevin...
Joseph Campbell.
Oh, yeah, that's right, Campbell. That's right, Eddie Campbell, yeah.
Eddie Campbell.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember reading that, and I got the big, fat, huge volume.
Yeah.
And it took me a while to get used to the artwork. It takes a minute to get used to it, but then once you finally get how he's doing things in his rhythm, you see he's using a lot of symbolism and a lot of stuff to convey certain ideas and certain themes that Alan Moore is writing about, and it ends up, by the time you're done, you're like, wow, this was pretty incredible.
Yeah, I think Moore's like 4 main works: Watchmen, From Hell, V for Vendetta, League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. I'm not going to say they're interchangeable, but I think any of those 4 should be on anyone's top 10, isn't it? I mean, Moore is just himself. He's such a key figure in comics.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Amazing stuff. We need to have that discussion still. Sad that we planned on it like 2 years ago. We never able to make it happen, but we need to do that one of these days.
Yeah, that was all my fault. So.
Oh no, I haven't forgotten about it. I have the hardcover here, so we had to make that happen. So my number 3, I'm not sure if it'll be a surprise to anyone who knows me, but is the first volume of Crossed by Garth Ennis and Jason Burrows. This is one I've read several times over. For me, it's survival horror at its finest. And in the classic Garth Ennis fashion, there's the characters are really what gets you invested. And I know there's some really terrible things that happen. It happens within I think it's issue 2, which is really kind of issue 3 because there's an issue 0. But it sets the tone. It sets it kind of lets you know what can happen. And it sets the bar for the terrible things that can happen to you if you make a mistake. And there's no hiding in a mall. There's no waiting it out. I mean, you have to keep moving and to survive. And the decisions you have to make to survive along the way, and what it kind of does to you and how it changes you. Yeah, and Jason Burrows does horror and body horror like no one else. So it's just the rest of the Cross series we can talk about. There's some really bad stuff in there. But yeah, the first volume is one that I go back to every so often as my comfort read. Is as strange as that
Jesus Christ,
as
Steve.
strange as that is, it is it's my comfort read. So yeah, it's it's one of my favorites. It's kind of survival, like I said, survival horror, and it is my number 3.
Can I apologize before I say what I'm going to say?
Go ahead.
Anyone listening, let's just all take a minute here to internalize that Steve goes to a man with a horse cock beating another one to death for comfort. Let's just process that for a minute there. Let it sink.
Yeah, it's yeah.
Yeah.
I should probably seek help, but yeah.
Yeah, it's classic Garth Ennis, isn't it? It's just like, I think sometimes he just write fucked up stuff for fucked up sake, like, and then he does The Boys and just keeps on taking things.
Geez, yeah.
Like, is that guy ever going to reach a ceiling?
No, I don't think so. I think, even in something like Cross, I think the whole horsecock thing, for those who haven't read it, are probably like, what are these guys talking about? But I think that part of that is kind of him poking fun at the whole thing. I mean, how ridiculous is that? So, so there is some dark. There's not as much humor in it, not as much darkness and dark humor as something like The Boys. The Boys is very heavy on the humor, but Cross has not a whole lot of humor in it at all. So, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Lighten the tone, Jared. Come on, please.
Lighten the tone? Okay, well, so we're going on to number 2 here. I don't know if this is lighter, but it's probably not unexpected. Sandman.
Bingo. Number 2 for me as well.
Oh, okay. So we got 2 number 2s here for Sandman. And just because I think that what was created here was a new mythology, plain and simple, that was a new mythology that was actually viable as a mythology and not just somebody making up gods, and how he incorporated this mythology into all previous mythologies and how he incorporated it into just everyday lives and the individual stories of the people throughout the whole series was just simply incredible. And it's you had a whole slew of different artists on this run, so it's hard to pick out who was the greatest artist on the whole thing. My personal favorite was Charles Vess on the Shakespeare story, but a lot of great artists that went through this run of Sandman, and it's I think it's probably one of the greatest comics ever written. Either this or Watchmen. Those are the 2 that I think are probably the greatest. My personal number 1 is, it's just a personal choice. I know it's not probably the greatest when we get to it, but I would say Watchmen and Sandman. They are the high bar of comic book storytelling. And,
they are my 1 and 2. 1 is Watchmen, 2nd is Sandman.
Yeah.
And Sandman, the thing is, I still find it was really hard to understand what it was about. When you haven't read it and you're trying to figure out what is Sandman about, I could never get a straight answer. And then you read it, and it's still very difficult to explain to other people what it is about, because it doesn't make a lot of sense. It's only when you read it and you get the full story that it all makes sense. But when you explain it, it doesn't. But it's got some amazing moments throughout the series. The serial killer. Go on.
Yeah, it's not easy to explain. It's deep, it's thematic, it's subtle, but it hits all those right notes that you just want to know about the state of humanity as you're reading through the whole series. And
and you mentioned about the that brought the series down for me a little bit. Having so many different artists, I think it detracted from the continuity of the series.
Yeah, I can
I
see that.
I, I wish there had just been one artist or one main artist that gave it a bit more consistency. I think that the first arc when he's searching for the lost items is a bit more cartoonish. Some of them are more whimsical. I think some of them don't do the series much of a favor. I don't know. I just wish for a more consistent tone throughout.
Yeah, I mean, I can see using different artists for some of the stories because the storytelling was so varied within the
Mm-hmm.
series that
Mm-hmm.
you could the way he presented how the makeup of the universe allowed for so many different types of stories that I could definitely see there being different artists for those different types. But I definitely see what you mean by there was certain arcs where it was like, oh wait, I have to get used to a whole new style of artwork now,
Mm-hmm.
and it might take you an issue or two to actually gel with it, you know.
Hmm.
Yeah.
But the writing was just incredible. So you know, it and it was an amazing wrap up, an amazing ending, and you know, he definitely did a great job.
Gaiman's high point.
I think so. Yeah.
So speaking of gaming, question for
Mm-hmm.
both of you: has is how difficult is it to separate the art from the artist with someone like Gaiman who, I don't know, if he has or hasn't done awful things or not, but at least it's been alleged that he has. What does that affect your enjoyment of his work, or can you look past that and separate the two?
Yeah, I can look past that to enjoy what I've because I can't change my opinion on what I've already read and already enjoyed. I'm not going to suddenly unenjoy this book because Gaiman turns out to be a shithead. Um, it's because it still is what it is, and there's also the like Gaiman is a different person now than when he wrote this stuff. He's not this. We're all different people now than when we were
Mhm.
younger, or when and so whatever he's turned into now, maybe that will be reflected in any future writing he does if he ever does any more. Um, and maybe that will turn me off. Who knows? That's for the future to decide. But the stuff that's set in stone, um, that was good for a reason because it was well done, and so you can take that for what it is. And I I have no problem with anybody who says, "Oh, that's it, I'm done with him, and I'm gonna not read any more of his stuff," or I'm not gonna if they've never read it, then I'm not gonna read it. That's fine. That's your decision. I think you'd be missing out on some really great literature if you did that. But it's it's I can't stand the fact that if these allegations are true, that really sucks. He was like one of my favorite writers for a long time, and but it doesn't change the art that he accomplished. It doesn't change the feats that he did accomplish. It's similar to like reading Robert E. Howard and stuff and H.P. Lovecraft nowadays. You know that Lovecraft was a complete racist, and
Mhm.
but he does have some good words on the page. And if you can overlook that and just take the story for what it is, then you might enjoy that stuff, and you might not. You might just say, "Nope, I can't do it." But it's a personal choice.
I think it's a complicated one
Hmm.
because I think the Lovecraft comparison is a bad one
Yeah,
because
it is. It is
you
off. Yeah.
cannot condemn a man for what he thinks. You can only do it for what he does. I think that's what sort of I find disappointing. His comics, yeah, I'll still read them. I still want to read Anansi Boys. I might get it secondhand instead of new, but other than that, I think Jared, you made a good point. He's still written some fantastic pieces of literature, and anyone that doesn't want to read them is their right, and they'll be missing out on some great things.
Yeah, I haven't even looked into the details, but yeah, it's good. It's a interesting topic, I think, to if you're able to let that go and to just let the art stand for what it is and ignore the rest, or it's an interesting topic for sure. All right, so Jose, your number 2 was
Sandman as well.
Sandman. Okay.
Yeah, we matched up.
So one of my previous bingos for my number 2 is Watchmen. I mean, it's hard to beat Watchmen. I think we've said a lot about it already, but it's one of the greatest pieces of literature. I think, is that a stretch to say that? I think if most lists it'd be number 1. I think.
Yeah,
as
I don't
far
think
as
that's a
influence
stretch at all,
yeah.
Steve. It really is.
I
was going to say, I don't know what you will hold up against Watchmen.
Mm-hmm.
What other graphic novel could you like put up against it and say this is objectively better or more elaborate? Or I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. If I was being more objective and not just spewing out what I love,
Yeah.
I think I would have to put Watchmen first. I couldn't. I would be hard pressed to find anything that matches up with that. Just pound for pound, word for word.
So another difficult question for both of you. Without getting into spoilers, did you enjoy the movie, and why or why not? The Watchmen movie.
I did enjoy it when it comes out. Because I purposely tempered my expectations. Because I knew it was going to be a bit bombastic and showy, and so I just enjoyed it for what it was. He tried to follow the story as close as he could. He changed the ending a little bit, but and so I thought it was. I enjoyed it. I didn't. It didn't blow me away because I don't know if it was like directed as well as it could have been, and I don't know if the acting was as great as it could have been, and all the little nitty gritty details you get in filmmaking that you get into, and it was stylized in that Zack Snyder type of manner, which is okay, but I did, I didn't. I just kind of sat back, relaxed, and just let it play, and it's okay. It's not bad.
I was really excited when it came out. Like you're sick of Superman and Batman, and to see this pokey sort of cultish, nerdy comic book get turned into a movie, I was excited, and I thought the movie obviously is an adaptation. Obviously, it's got to change a few things.
Yeah.
And that Zack Snyder violence and slow mos and stuff like that was relatively new still. He hadn't done many movies by then, so I enjoyed it. I mean, Alan Moore is very, very critical of all the adaptations of his works.
Yeah.
But I have to say, the reason why he sold the rights to the movies, and I know for sure this was the case for League of Gentlemen, was to help the artists financially. So, because David Lloyd told me the reason he sold the rights to Gentlemen was to help Kevin O'Neill get some money. So for someone who hates Hollywood, for someone that hates DC Comics because he never got the rights back to the Watchmen, that's why they keep on reprinting it every so many years. Because if it ever goes out of print, all the rights go back to Alan Moore. That was on the contract. And that's why every 5 years you get a new hardback edition, slipcase edition, recolored edition, whatever edition. And he's very angry about that. But that's why we got the movies. He's helping his fellow artists. And, I think kudos to him. And the movie, I think, they were using the bloody comic. They were taking out the panels for the screenplay or whatever you call it. They were trying to be as close and faithful as possible. And it's probably the best adaptation out of all his major works.
Yeah, I think it's a pretty damn good adaptation. I thought, and of course, it is stylized. It has the flair and the gloss and all that. But I mean, I don't know that you could get any much more faithful to the movie, except for the end. Much more faithful to. I mean, some of the scenes are taken right out of the book. I mean, you could see the images. I mean, pretty wild.
I didn't even mind the changing of the ending. It didn't bother me that much. I was just like, oh, okay, that's cool.
I actually prefer it. Actually, I think the end of the movie is better than the end of the book, as sanctimonious as that sounds.
It's the same spirit of the. It's the same spirit as the graphic novel. They haven't radically changed anything. So
I agree.
Yeah. All right. So we know Jose's number one, Jared.
Yeah.
All right. My number one is
dun, dun, dun.
Savage Sword of Conan. Specifically, Roy Thomas's original run on the magazine-size comics of Conan that Marvel did back in the 70s. I just love these adaptations. Speaking of adaptations, it's great. The artwork, first by Barry Windsor Smith, who's a very famous Raphael-like artist whose line work was spectacular, and then John Buscema, who is now known today as the seminal Conan artist. Everybody who draws Conan now basically copies John Buscema. And so the artwork in those magazines went the extra mile to be just great. They were originally in black and white, and the pencil work was just amazing in these magazines. And Roy Thomas knew what he was doing when it came to adapting Robert E. Howard's most famous character. And they like when I've been in and out of comics, mostly in over the past 40 or so years, but even when I dropped out of comics for a while and got sick of them and stopped collecting some, I always got Conan, and then it started with the Savage Sword run by Roy Thomas, and I have always loved them, and they're the only one. Like, I've sold off collections, but I've always kept the Conans, and probably always will. I don't know who's gonna take over them whenever I'm gone, but they'll be there. Savage Swords of Conan and all the other Conan stuff I get too, but those are the absolute my favorites of all time, and absolutely just love them.
And are they actually adaptations of the original Robert E. Howard stories?
Many of them are. Yeah, he would do direct adaptations, and then he might throw in an issue in between here and there to kind of try to connect things, you know, because Howard's original stories were never they
weren't connected,
chronology told in chronology or anything like that. But he would he did a lot of direct adaptations, especially in those early days of the Savage Sword series. And then once, because there's only so much Howard material out there, so once that material ran out, he would like either connect some stories together in the middle, or he would continue on some stories. But the best ones are the early issues of Savage Sword of Conan, and Dark Horse did us the favor of collecting the magazines into these big formats that are really nice to have.
Very nice. Anything else you want to add about your number one, Jose?
No, Watchmen. I think I think it is. I don't know. It's one of those comics that I've always refrained from reviewing because I think it's been so talked about. I don't think I can bring anything new, and I don't think I'm intelligent enough to say something clever that other people haven't said before. But it's definitely, and I don't know if it's as accessible to non-comic readers. I think maybe you need a bit of background on superheroes to read and understand Watchmen, maybe.
That's a great point, actually,
Mhm.
Jose, because Alan Moore is redefining the superhero comic so much that without that history, you might not grasp some of that.
Because some of the original Minutemen in the Watchmen were just sort of your archetypal superheroes, isn't it? And I think every other series that I've mentioned or comic graphic novel that I've mentioned in today's podcast, you anyone could just pick them up and read them.
Yeah, right.
Whereas I think Watchmen, if you're the casual graphic novel reader, it'll escape you for sure, and you will need to be explained and you need to be
Yeah.
told. And
No, I agree with that, and that probably is one thing holding it back from some recommendations to some people because, yeah, you do kind of need to have a just a vague working knowledge of history of comics and superheroes to really appreciate a lot of the subtleties that go on in Watchmen. Yeah.
because even like we were talking about Sandman, but Sandman is so much its own thing
Hmm.
that you are learning about it as you go along. You don't really need much more.
Yeah.
It's a very self-contained world.
Yeah. I mean, I think with Sandman, it would benefit you if you knew something about mythologies in general. Um, like Norse mythologies,
Mm.
Egyptian and the Christian mythology and stuff like that. I think it would benefit you if you knew some stuff about that stuff. Reading Sandman, but it's definitely not as esoteric as Watchmen.
Hmm.
It's a really good question. I think having that context helps you put it all together, but I think you can still enjoy it. You just won't get the full impact without having a little bit of background on heroes and
Yeah.
superheroes. But
Well, there's so many levels to it that
mhm,
yeah, you can definitely enjoy it for something.
yeah.
Definitely, absolutely.
All right. Well, I don't think anyone will be surprised. Well, no, I think another Garth Ennis book for me, and that is Punisher Max. Is run on Punisher Max. This one is another one with so many great arcs in it, like the Slavers, Up and Down as Black as White, Punisher Born. I mean, it's all classic stuff. It's of course has the say it again the Garth Ennis kind of spin on things, the humor, the violence, the gore. Punisher is it's kind of like the Dark Knight type of thing where he's an older, grizzled. Um, he's fallen apart with his age, and he's just holding on, still letting criminals have it. And he's not this invincible killing machine, but he is a killing machine. He's just a he. That's all. There's not a whole lot to his character. He's just a weapon of war, and he's also fallen apart because of he's worn down. And there's some Ennis plays around with microchip and the sidekick thing and some other things. His Punisher's experience in Vietnam and what really the moment that really turned Frank Castle into someone like the Punisher. There's some fun. It plays around with that a little bit, but yeah, it's another one that's a really great run for Punisher. I think it's the only really run that I've enjoyed. There's some other ones. The other Punisher Max run, the Jason Aaron run, was okay. That did some interesting things towards the end, but overall, I think Punisher Max is the quintessential Punisher in my book.
Were you a Punisher fan before you read the Max stuff?
I was way back, and then I kind of fell off because it's hard to make the Punisher a kind of a PG-13 type of character. I mean, it's hard to make him interesting without really going, like the HBO version of the Punisher. So that's what Ennis does. He doesn't hold back as
Yeah.
most people would expect. So
I've got a general question about graphic novels. So I was talking to one of my work colleagues. She's the art teacher, and she said that comics that's not art. That's illustration.
Hmm.
So for it to be a piece of art, it needs to be like a self-contained, like a painting. Whereas I would counter that if a novel is a piece of art, if Dickens is art, then surely a graphic novel is that combination of words and images, and it could be considered art in its own right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I definitely think it's art. It's not. It's not a painting. Um, if that's what she means by art. Um, it's its own art form. It's so it's definitely the combination of images and words that create this art form, and it's the art form of making art in words that create a um, sight line for the reader to follow in a certain manner in order to tell a story. And that's about the most I can remember from Scott McCloud's Understanding Comics. If you guys ever want a better explanation of the art form of comic books, read that.
Hmm.
It's outstanding. And so it's yeah, it's its own art form. It's not. I don't think it's relatable to a painting. I don't think it's relatable to prose novel. I think it's its own thing.
Hmm. I would say it's art. I mean, that's interesting, though. It's an interesting question, though. What was the name of that book, Jared? You just mentioned Understanding.
Understanding Comics by Scott McCloud. It's fantastic, and it's for anybody. Anybody can read that, and even it's related. It gives you a great understanding of graphic arts too, of like advertising graphic arts and what images do for us and how they lead our eye to certain places, and how line work is designed to do that in combination with words and stuff. And it's a really fantastic, entertaining lesson plan. Really,
Oh, nice. This was fun. Tough, but fun.
Does anyone think we've left something obvious out? Is someone going to come back and go, how could you, none of you three, have picked?
probably.
Berserk, maybe?
Somebody's going to say, "What about Frank Miller's The Dark Knight?"
Oh, yeah. Frank Miller.
Overrated.
Hot take. Yeah, and I'm sure there's others too. I'm sure there's other, like classics or whatever that people will say. What about that? What about this? What about somebody's gonna say? What about Stan Lee's stuff? Whatever.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
God, I've got the three. I've got the original X-Men run from Stan Lee, and I think Roy Thomas took over Stan Lee writing the original X-Men run in
Yeah.
the 60s.
Yep.
And I've got them there, those 3 volumes. They were awful. I mean, no, like the stories were awful. They were puerile. Like the plots were thin, flimsy. The dialogue was corny. They were terrible. The one thing though is the amount of creativity. Everything X-Men was there already on those first 20 issues. All the villains,
Yeah.
all the themes, all that kind of stuff was there. But my God, the execution was poor. I mean, thank God Chris Claremont came later and fixed it all. But
Hmm.
they were, I mean, and they ended up getting cancelled because
Hmm.
they weren't selling.
Yep. Yeah, Claremont revived it and brought it back and made it prominent. But yeah, right. It was canceled for a while. Yep.
Mm.
Would the X-Men be what they are today without Claremont?
Nope.
No. Honestly, Steve, like I've read those volumes like maybe 7 years ago, they're cringy. They really are cringy. And it's like downright bad. It's literally like there's a hole in the ground, and they go down, and there's this whole universe with dinosaurs, and it's bad. It's yeah, it's not great. It's not great. And like the depth of the stories and the scope, like I said, really really childish. But all the elements were there: Magneto, the Juggernaut, all the villains, all the characters. It was there for someone to develop them, and take them to the next level, which is, I think, it's what Claremont did. My opinion.
Yeah. That was a good one. Yeah, this is fun. This is tough, but it was fun.
Yeah, I don't enjoy these ones, because when we did which one did we do recently? The top 10 fantasy series. Didn't we do that recently? I did that with someone recently.
Oh, that's what's going on?
I don't know. Paramita was there. I think Susanna was there. We did that one, and again,
that's right. Yeah, with Susanna.
Yeah, and it was it was, and the fact that you had to rank them, that's just like the ultimate ball ache.
It's tough. It was quite the homework assignment you gave us there, Steve.
Yeah. Yeah, someone's got to do it. Varsha's off this week, so someone's got to do it. But awesome. Thanks both of you for hanging out and talking comics with me for almost 2 hours.
No problem.
Great
It's a
stuff.
pleasure.
So, Jared, where can people find you?
You can find me at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and on Speculative Speculations podcast and on Page Chewing forums as well.
And Jose.
At Jose's Amazing Worlds in YouTube, the Fantasy Talks Live podcast, and of course in the pagechewing.com forums.
Nice. Yeah, you can find me on Page Chewing, on Speculative Speculations, or any of the other podcasts we have going on at any given moment. Come by and say hello. And hope everyone has a great weekend. We'll talk to everyone very soon.